Look, everybody knows the value of Jason Kelce to that offensive line, to the locker room, to all the things that go into making a team cohesive and good. Nobody in the market has anything but the highest respect for Jason Kelce, and he's a very important player to the Eagles. So they can downplay this all they want, and in the end, maybe they'll have good reason to. But for now, I'm concerned anytime a player of Kelce's value and import has surgery done. It's never nothing. So let's just see.
You got the Birds 365 duo of Jeff Kerr in for John McMullen, who's got to be down at another early Eagle practice today, and me, Jody Mack. Joining us on the stream is one of our favorite buds. We already know he's a star columnist, arguably the best columnist in the city. Glenn Macnow is trying to make him a radio star. We'll try and help his streaming presence. He is Mike Sielski, and he joins us here on Birds 365. How are you, Mikey?
I'm great, Jody. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. By the way, Rise is still on my summer reading list. I am almost finished, but let me tell you, it is an excellent, excellent book. I could not put it down on my plane ride to Vegas and back.
I appreciate that, Jeff. Thanks. As long as you bought it, that's all I care about. You don't have to read it.
That's why we like Sielski, the honesty. All right. We talked about the areas of expertise that you have and where you strive at. I'm going to make you a doctor here today, too, because I'm loving this on our stream. Varying opinions on Jason Kelce's injury, anywhere from, he'll be practicing next week, to we're screwed, he's going to miss 8 games. I'm not a doctor. We have to play one from time to time in columns, on the radio, on streaming and the like. We can use surgeries that have been done for similar type injuries as a potential basis. I ain't got no bloody idea if Jason Kelce's going to play week 1. Do you, Sielski?
I do not. I will say this, Jody. I would feel better about this if I were an Eagles fan. If this were as routine as it's being made out to be, he might have had this done before training camp began. Obviously, there was some impetus for this to happen now. And yes, look, maybe it's a simple clean out procedure. That seems to be the popular term. Just to describe what is going to happen to Kelce's elbow. And I guess, this is part of the reason why you draft a guy like Cam Jurgens, because Kelce is 34 and situations and injuries like this are going to crop up more frequently for a player of that age, presumably. But no, I don't think it's something to feel great about because, anytime a player goes under the knife, it's something where, it's natural to assume that he's going to come out and come back not quite where he once was. So when will he get back? I don't know. I'm always skeptical whenever an NFL team gives us a timeline for any kind of injury, and this situation is no different.
Yeah, Mike, I know. I guess one reason why the Eagles aren't panicking is because Riley White had this same injury, and he actually got it later. Kelce did, and he actually came back week 1 against the Eagles and had 4 catches for 84 yards. But obviously, wide receivers are different than centers. But the point I'm trying to make is, it just doesn't seem like they're making it as big of a deal as maybe it should be here.
Look, everybody knows the value of Jason Kelce to that offensive line, to the locker room, to all the things that go into making a team cohesive and good. Nobody in the market has anything but the highest respect for Jason Kelce, and he's a very important player to the Eagles. So they can downplay this all they want, and in the end, maybe they'll have good reason to. But for now, I'm concerned anytime a player of Kelce's value and import has surgery done. It's never nothing. So let's just see.
Mike, I want your take on something that I've been debating on the air in 2 different places over the last few days. When Johnny Mack and I did the show on Monday after the Eagles live practice, John was kind of convinced that the Eagles' best offense is still when Jalen Hurts runs the football. RPOs, pull it down, take off, the most exciting plays, most productive plays were Jalen Hurts surprising the snot out of the Eagle defense and taking off and running the ball. So much so that John was ready to say, the Eagles should run the same offense they did last year. It was their better offense. That's what they do best. Put your faith into the offensive line and just pick up where you left off. My partner on radio yesterday, Joe DeCamera, said the same thing. Whether you believe that or not, that has zero chance of happening, right? They went out and got A.J. Brown and gave him a $100 million contract for a reason, not to block for Jalen Hurts on RPOs, right?
I've been saying this too, Jody. Look where they spent their money. They spent their money and capital on A.J. Brown, trading 2 draft picks, including a first rounder, to get him and then signing him, pardon me, as you said, to that contract. They signed Dallas Goedert to a 4-year, $50+ million contract. They used a first-round draft pick on Devontae Smith. They want to throw the ball. And there was another tidbit that came out, I believe, earlier this week, kind of from a larger NFL perspective about how the league wants officials to crack down again on basically pass interference calls and illegal contact. I mean, the whole league is trending toward throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. And that's what the Eagles want to do. They want to throw the ball. That's where they spend their money. That's what they believe in. That's what Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie have always believed in. That's why they traded up twice to draft Carson Wentz back in 2016. And that's why they drafted Donovan McNabb in 1999. And so I think there's a lot of merit to what John is saying, that the best offense for the Eagles to run is not necessarily the offense that the Eagles want to run. And I've been pounding this drum since last year, ever since they shifted before that game against the Lions and went ahead and destroyed Detroit, 44-6, and became a run-first team from that point on. They're playing that way because they have to. They're not playing that way because they want to. And I think what we're going to see, at least to start, if I had to guess and bet, would be them trying to play the way that they tried to play at the beginning of last season, with Jalen Hurts as kind of the nucleus of the whole thing, not necessarily from a running perspective, but from a throwing perspective. Now, maybe Nick Sirianni will work more of, the RPO and the Hurts action as a runner into it more than he would like, to try to diversify the offense. But we all know how the Eagles want to play. And the question really is, can Jalen Hurts play that way?
Yeah. Mike, one quote, I think your colleague Jeff McMullen actually asked Jalen Hurts this, was, about I don't even want to go stereotypical, but, the running quarterback, if you will. And Hurts said, look, I'm not going to change my game. That's who I am. That's my reality. And I agree with Jalen Hurts 100%. Like, his biggest asset is his legs and his ability to score touchdowns in the red zone right now. And do you think Eagles would even get mad if Jalen Hurts takes off and gets a big game and just doesn't read through his progressions?
I don't know if they get mad at him per se or angry at him, but I do think it's something that would play into their evaluation of him as their potential long-term answer at quarterback. Right? They very much believe in while you want a quarterback who can do multiple things, you want a Donovan McNabb who has a great arm and can make all the throws, but if he absolutely needs to, can break from the pocket and run for a first down and gain big yardage that way. They thought Carson Wentz was going to be that guy too. They want that. But throwing the ball on time, in rhythm, to the right receiver in the right spot is a key component of that. And that's where everybody has the hesitation about Hurts. I get the nature of that question, and I understand why people are asking that question. And it's a fair question to ask. I think, the part of the reason that Hurts turns that question on his head is that, if you think back to the stereotypes of the black quarterback coming up through the NFL, it wasn't just that, the perception was that, they couldn't play that position. It was that they weren't wired to play that position, that kind of Neanderthalic thinking that they couldn't be leaders and all this stuff. And Jalen Hurts checks all those boxes and then some. I mean, I pointed this out in a column last week, kind of comparing him to Kyler Murray, right? Like they're kind of opposite sides. It's like Superman and Bizarro's Superman, right? Murray can do everything athletically that you want a quarterback to do, and yet the Cardinals felt the need to include this clause in his contract that he would actually study up and prepare, off the field and away from the field. And Hurts nobody has any doubts about his, intangibles, his intelligence, his work ethic, his leadership, all those things. It's simply a matter of once the bullets are flying, is he going to stand in there and make the throws that the modern NFL demands a quarterback make? And so, it's really an interesting, deep question. And it's one that, I don't think a team like the Eagles can do anything other than try to answer it as best they can for themselves, in terms of, is Jalen Hurts the guy we need to run the offense that we want to run?
Mike, we got 32 days until first game of the year against the Lions in Detroit, and it's already become a fun narrative. I know we're all trying to jettison through the 3 preseason games, the joint practices that will be important, and get to that Lions game as quickly as we can. I'm ready to go there, and I'm surprised that a lot of people are nervous / scared of the Lions week 1. I think the Lions are going to stink, no matter how good they look on Hard Knocks, no matter how much you may think Dan Campbell is a quote machine. By the way, Deuce Staley looked good on Hard Knocks last night. They're a bad football team. I don't care. You don't want to play the Lions early in the season because they don't know how bad they'll be. Oh, yeah, they know how bad they'll be. Did you see Jamal Williams going, last year's record? That's not us. I cry when I think about it. Why are people nervous about playing Lions first week of the season?
Because for a couple reasons, I think, Jody. Not because every new NFL season is an unknown, and the prospect of the Eagles losing the first game of the season to a team that was as bad last season as the Lions were just naturally sets everybody off on, if they lose that game, then their season is lost and they're not going to be as good as we hope they're going to be. I think the other factor that's playing into it too, is that Campbell is very much, I guess the term would be an old school kind of coach, in terms of the Lions are hitting, the Lions are getting back to the basics of football. Campbell is projecting the image of a coach that Philadelphia fans very much identify with. We're going to punch him in the teeth, we're going to kick him in the shins, and we're going to bite him in the leg, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to beat them. And everybody in Philadelphia goes, oh, this is exactly the kind of coach that we want to have, right? Except that none of that matters once the ball gets kicked off and the Detroit Lions players have to line up against the other team's players, and the Lions players don't match up from a talent and scheme standpoint to the other team. So I think those sorts of anxieties are natural amongst Eagles fans. It's a function of the market and the kind of football that a lot of people who are fans of the team grew up on and want to see. But that doesn't mean that the Lions are better than the Eagles, and certainly doesn't mean that they're going to win week 1.
Like, through the 3 training camp practices I was at, one thing I see is a team with a lot of talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. If this defense is as good as we think it can be, what's our ceiling for the Eagles here? Is it just the NFC East, or you think we can go higher than that?
Jeff, I wrote this in a column about 2 weeks ago, that it would not be completely surprising if the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl. Now, that is hugely dependent on Jalen Hurts, okay? And I have my reservations and doubts about whether Hurts is that kind of top-tier quarterback. But the thing that Hurts at this stage of his career allowed the Eagles to do was, because he only makes, $1.9 million, $2 million, or whatever he counts that against the cap, they were able to go out and make all these acquisitions and bring in all this talent. At least during this past offseason, and they've drafted better over the last couple of years, so that they have players who are homegrown who look like they are pretty good as well. So I think they can be a really good team. I think they're a 12-5 kind of team. That ought to be the baseline expectation for who this team is, given the division they're in, given the schedule as it is, and given the way that they were able to improve the places that they needed to improve. They added an elite pass rusher in Hassan Reddick. They added an elite wide receiver in A.J. Brown. They added another solid starting cornerback in James Bradbury. So, they're a good team. And if the season doesn't go the way everyone hopes it's going to go, I think people are going to take a hard, quick look at people like Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon. I feel like we've been saying these things over and over again since the middle of the summer, but they haven't changed. The factors that are the most important ones and will be determinative about how good this team turns out to be are the ones everybody's been saying since the middle of the summer. It's Hurts, it's Sirianni, it's Gannon.
Mike, the thing that did change in the middle of summer, at least for me, and maybe it's shame on me, but I think most people were in the same boat that I was in, was we found out that Shane Steichen was calling all the plays. That transformed in the middle of last season, didn't get around to telling anybody, and they admitted it this year. So you've got a very personality-based head coach who's good with the media and knows all the answers and knows how to set up the way that he wants his team to be perceived and looked at. You got a defensive coordinator who I actually, the more I see, and I was down at practice yesterday, I like the way Steichen answers questions. He's forthcoming. He looks you in the eye, answers your question. He's not going to give away the secret sauce, but he's a straight shooter. And then you got Shane Steichen, who to me is like a wet blanket. There's not much there when you get a chance to talk to and converse with Shane Steichen, but he is the creative mind that is going to make or break the Eagles' offensive season. You got faith in Shane Steichen calling the plays this year?
It's interesting you frame Steichen that way, Jody, because in the couple of times I've had the chance to interact with him away from the podium, just amongst a small group of reporters, he seemed pretty outgoing and pretty open.
Really?
Yeah. And
wow, I've never seen that.
Yeah, and as far as him calling the plays, I mean, look, if his contributions led them to what happened in the second half of last season, then Eagles fans ought to feel pretty good about that, right? Like the offense wasn't as good through the first 7 games as it was through the final 10. Now, some of that is a function of the schedule. Some of that is the function of the change in philosophy. But let's see. Look, I think that the process by which plays get called in the NFL is different from the way we conceive of it, right? It really is kind of by committee. And the question is, who is the last voice that Jalen Hurts will hear in the headset? And if it's Steichen compared to Sirianni, okay, we'll see. We'll see. I think we can bog ourselves down a little too much in who does what and how this all works. I mean, when Andy Reid was here, he would give Marty Mornhinweg or Brad Childress rope to call their own plays for periods of time. And then when it started to go stale, he'd take it back and then he'd give it back. And, these things come and go, I think, for the most part. So if things don't go well 1 or 2 weeks back to back, I'm sure Sirianni will take the play calling back. And then things will get better and, then they'll get stale again and then they'll go back to Steichen. It's just the way it goes.
One of my biggest defenses of Jalen Hurts, Mike, has been what we were talking about with Shane Steichen. This is the first year he's going to have the same play caller since, and Jalen Hurts even said it, since he was 16 years old. And somehow he's made it to this level in the NFL and has had some success. So what can we expect now that he does have the same guy and actually has familiarity with him in one full offseason?
Well, presumably, Jeff, you're going to have a play caller and a coaching staff who knows better what Jalen Hurts' strengths are, how to utilize them, and when to ask him to do the things that he might have been struggling to do. I know John has pointed this out on the show in the past, that if you look at kind of Hurts' throw chart from last season, it looks like a donut, right? Like there's a big hole in the middle of it because he was so reluctant to throw the ball over the middle of the field. A quarterback has to be able to do that. So the question becomes for Steichen and Sirianni, how often do you ask Hurts to do that? How much is it just a basic function of the offense? Hey, if he can't make this throw, then we can't run what we want to run. And how much of it is, okay, we got to ask him to make this throw and we got to give him opportunities to do it. And here's the ways that we can allow him to do that. From what I've seen at camp, the few days I've been out there and from what I've read, the days that I haven't, Hurts is throwing the ball an awful lot to A.J. Brown. And a couple of days that I've seen, it's in a lot of quick slants. It's, 5-6 yards, boom, get him the ball in motion so that Brown can shed a smaller cornerback and create yards after the catch. So maybe we see more of that. I mean, look, they're not going to show us much in the portions of the practices that we can see that will reveal what they're going to do in the season. They're not even going to reveal very much of it in these preseason games. I mean, it used to be that you would get a decent sense of what things would look like from a team in the regular season from what they would do in the preseason. I mean, Jody probably remembers this as well as I do if he was in the market. I remember the second preseason game in 2004 after the Eagles had acquired Terrell Owens. And the first play from scrimmage at the first home preseason game of that year, Donovan McNabb threw deep to Owens, who caught it for a touchdown. And everybody went, okay, here's what we're going to see this year from the Eagles. Well, you don't get that kind of revealing moment really anymore in the preseason. Teams don't allow it. They don't want it. They're using these games as part of a wide tapestry of evaluating, the 90 guys that they're going to figure out who are going to end up being on their rosters.
So sorry, Eagle fans. For those of you planning going down to the game on Friday versus the Jets, Mike Sielski has just promised you it's not going to be an 83-yard pass from Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown here.
I would bet against it, Jody. I would bet against it.
Oh, that's funny. Mike, great stuff. We appreciate you hopping on board. I know you're running the kids off to camp. Have a good day. We'll get you on again before the season gets underway. Thanks for jumping in today.
Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.